Next speaker is a specialist in natural language processing for the digital humanities, and she's been applying as directing the Impresso project, this type of technology for trying to make the most of newspapers archive. Please welcome Maud Ehrmann.
So after these presentations on the tools, the objective and the challenge of journalism today, with this presentation I propose to look back and to look at historical newspapers. So newspapers have been with us since a long time, and they have been published since centuries on a very regular basis. They report on all kinds of matters. They have been recording war and minor events. They report about international, national, and local affairs, and they document daily life. They also reflect the context in which they were produced, and in a word, they keep track of the great and the small history, and today they hold a very diverse, dense, and continuous information. So I'd like to propose to look at what has been written for the past 200 years by these journalists, at that time still often with pen and paper, by people who were actually not yet called journalists. So today, these sources are very valuable for historians. We are using them since long to investigate many historical questions, and this interest of historians in these sources is all the more important since the traditional barrier to the use of historical newspaper, mainly difficult access and very tedious exploration, this barrier has started to fall thanks to digitalization. So if 10 years ago you needed to turn a lot of pages and to read countless articles in millions of issues, such as you can see here in the British libraries, nowadays, there are many libraries and archives who propose to see the facsimile of newspaper via online portals, as well as to search in the text which have been extracted via optical character recognition. So this is a huge step ahead in terms of preservation and in terms of access. However, keyword search is not always satisfying. There are problems of too many hits, too many results, irrelevant results, and as well as false negative due to OCR mistake. And what is more, paradoxically, if the data is there and available, it is still too big to be explored, and researchers are completely overwhelmed by this wealth of text. So it has both sides. On the one side, it's a gold mine for historians. You can find a lot of things, but when it comes to exploring it, it's a bit of a coal mine, and it's very, very tedious. So if we ask historians how would like us or people with technology to help you, here are some examples of what they say. They would like that we help them to expand their query based on common OCR mistakes and spelling variants. So for example, if someone will look for government in German, it would be nice if a tool could suggest a word of similar variants or semantically close to this word, and for this we can have the support of lexical processing. Another request which comes often from historians is to find the frequency of a word. So far so good, but in article in a certain type or certain thematic. And this echoes the need as well to be able to distinguish between real occurrences and things that perhaps are of less interest, such as meteo pages or stock markets. So for this, we need to segment the facsimile of the newspapers and give them semantic categories. And here again, we can rely on computer vision and natural language processing technique to help us. Another query, very, very common, I would like to find this person in the newspaper and I want the right one, I don't want the homonyms, and I will be happy to know with whom this person has been mentioned in the corpus, and possibly also to know if this article was about the person or was written by these persons. And there are many other queries. For this, we can have the support of named entity processing from natural language processing. And there are many other techniques, many other requests from historians. They would like to discover similar attempts to appreciate the high-level thematics of the corpus and to be able to collect their own collection based on metadata, but not only. So we can see that there is a need to go much more far than only keyword search, and we can ask the question of how we can enable semantic indexing of large collection of historic newspapers. So this was the objective of Impresso, a project of 3 years financed by the Swiss National Science Foundation between 2017 and 2020. This project is still maintained, and it was carried out by 3 main partners, the DH Lab at PFL Lausanne, the Institute of Computational Linguistics from Zurich University, and the Center for Contemporary and Digital History from the Luxembourg University. We also received the support of associated partners who provided us with the data and helped us with co-design and historical research questions. So the team behind the project is highly interdisciplinary. You have people who came from natural language processing or digital humanities, also people with engineering background, web developers and designers, and naturally historians. I take this opportunity to thank all the team. I'm really only the spokesperson here. We also had associated researchers to help us. So that was the team, and this was our plan. So very briefly, we had the following main step. First, we gather archive from different countries, in our case, Switzerland and Luxembourg. This newspaper archive came in French, in German, and in Luxembourg. Then once we have the data, we prepare them, and we apply tools to extract information and enrich them with semantic annotation. And then comes the problem of the objective is to make them accessible, so we design and develop an interface in order to interact and visualize with these sources and these semantic enrichments. And finally, once all this done, then the next step is to do historical research. So while carrying out this objective, I've been facing 5 main challenges that I will briefly outline here. The first one relates to digitized newspaper silos with 2 main issues. The first one, 2 main issues, coverage and accessibility. So regarding coverage, a survey has shown that only 10% of newspaper holding has been digitized by libraries. So this is very partial, and we need to keep this in mind. And even if newspapers are digitized, it doesn't mean that they are accessible. Here you see the profile of European digitized newspaper, and here you see the profile of those which are available in open access. So we have digitized collection, but only partially, and they are not always available. So we are kind of facing tensions between the coverage and homogeneity of the corpus that we can build. And here, historians would like to have, for sure, a homogeneous data set, but then it will be perfect, but it likely will be small. And if we want really to reach high coverage, we will have something like Google Books, but then it will be perhaps less perfect. And today, newspapers are a bit in between, and with current digitization, the situation will improve, but there is still this tension, and this is not always compatible with the research practice of historians. Nevertheless, we go ahead and we collected the sources. This was not easy. That was what we call actually a data acquisition crusade. And it turned out that the amount of administrative effort that we had to deploy to really collect the data really suffers a comparison with technical development. So that was the first challenge, to acquire the data. Then we have it, and what comes to us is quite big, and to put it frankly, a bit messy. So what comes to us? Well, we have 3 things. First, we have files from the OCR, which come in different formats. Then we have files for the images, which come in different formats. And then we have files for the metadata, which come from in different formats. So first, the main thing we have to do is to process it and to make it processible large scale, because it's quite large data. And what we actually do is to normalize, meaning that we bring everything to a common representation. And each time we do this, we are at risk of losing information. When doing this, we encounter quite some surprises and some problems. Regarding OCR, we had the problem of empty folder, corrupted archive, and many data inconsistencies. So we thought it come perhaps from the step before. Nevertheless, we could not do nothing but try to collect information systematically about these problems. The problem with images always come with the box coordinates, which are not always correct, and with metadata, the files are far from being complete and standard. So I want to highlight here that even before processing the text with text mining tool, there is a whole world of hidden step, which is really laying the ground for everything, and it's quite invisible, though it's laborious and very tedious. And in this context of big data, it's quite a challenge to care about quality. Once we have the data ready to be processed, we wanted to really start processing it, but then we face the problem of noisy and historical text. So here you see the frequency of the term gazelle in Swiss newspaper, and you see a peak of occurrence of this animal in the middle of the 19th century. And obviously, there was not a lot of gazelle in Switzerland, but rather a lot of gazettes, such as the one of Lausanne. So this is really the problem of OCR. We can have different strategies to face this problem, and one is obviously to redo the OCR, so to improve the model to do them. We have worked, the colleague from Zurich have worked on fracture fonts, and they have deployed some models, and there is really the possibility to improve the result by a large margin, as you can see here. And this result actually motivated the archive holder to open its archive, to redigitize, to have better scan of better quality, so that was nice. Since OCR model were not our primary objective, we also deploy what we call OCR Quality Assessment, where we want to compute the quality of OCR of an article to allow users to estimate the completeness of their research. So this is a measure which focuses on content word and which is meant to be easily understandable by non-technician people. So despite this challenge of OCR and of noise, we apply a series of natural language processing. First, we start with lexical processing. We identify the language of an article, normalize the spelling of historical variants, compute word embedding. As I said, we also compute OCR quality. We apply topic modeling, where we try to identify the topics of each article in the newspapers. We also compute, identify, categorize, and link to external database named entities which appear in the text, person, location, and organization. We also compute text reuse, which is the identification of similar passage, copy-paste, if you want, between different articles, and then they are clustered together into cluster of similar passages. We also compute image similarity to have a visual search, and we develop a recommender system and also extraction of keyword phrase. So what I want to say here is that the technology that we inherit from natural language processing are quite orthogonal to what archives are proposing today, and there is a huge time and domain adaptation problem for this technology. Once we have this, sorry, I missed the slide, so that's the challenge I was just talking about. And there is also the problem of the application context. NLP methods are just being applied in this historical and human science context, and the tool must be really tailored to the research question and the need of historians. Then once we have enriched the data, comes the question of how we can accommodate text analysis research and their usage by humanities scholars. And here our answer to this challenge was really co-design and fast prototyping. So we really work in continuous exchange with all the people in the project to evaluate, iterate, and validate things together via workshop and many other events. So what you see represented here on the picture is all the soul of the project. You have librarians, archivists, computer scientists, computational linguists, and historians. We kind of took up the challenge to really create something which can be really helpful for historians. So concretely speaking, we started from historical research scenario by historians and from mock-ups from designers, such as this one. And then we iterated via several workshops, collecting feedback. Here on the left, you see the ground zero of the interface, and we ask feedback from user with this sheet, which you see on the right, highlighting the strengths and the weaknesses for each component and functionality of the interface. Via iteration, via workshop, many workshops, after having identified the very common scenario, how do I plot a timeline, then more original user need really started to emerge, and we can say that every component of the interface is really the result of a long series of discussion and have seen many transitions. We can take one example. When we started with a need to compare collection, you are here on the right, on the left, sorry, the first version, which was not satisfying. Then a second attempt in the middle, and finally on the right, something which led to the component as it is today. It's certainly not the last version, but it is really the result of many variations. So the main advantage of this co-design approach is that it is very inclusive, and we managed to really put all discipline thoughts and expertise in this. Then, if we have new ways to engage with data, this means also a new way to use it. And here it is more the challenge for the historians who have been trained to work in very precise manner, and here they are confronted with data which is algorithmically generated, which is imperfect, and what is more, which kind of changing a bit all the time. So there is no perfect solution for this. It's an open question, but the historians from the colleague from Luxembourg have really highlighted the fact that if you have a nice interface, doesn't mean that it is perfect, and if you have something which is not perfect, doesn't mean that it's completely useless. And the two guiding principles of the interface were really transparency, where you always try to give information to the user about what am I looking at, so really to make things transparent, and generosity in order to propose new things. So With this, I would like to do a demonstration. I will take as a seed example one of the historical scenarios that we have, which is the Battle of Arnhem, which is an airborne operation in the Second World War, where the Allied troops tried to go through Germany via the German border. They dropped soldiers in enemy territory, and these soldiers had the mission to secure the bridges. This operation ultimately failed, but it was one of our scenario, and the question was how this event has been covered by the press in Switzerland and in Luxembourg since 1944. So now come a video. It will be a bit quick. I'm sorry in advance. This is the interface of Impresso. So here is the home page. And in the center, you can see some information about how to register. Just below, we put what we call Impresso Challenge. That's a step of a guiding step in order to discover the main functionality of the interface. And on the left-hand side of the interface, you have some statistics about the corpus, which is currently there. And I propose to look for the keyword Arnhem, so the name of this city. We already have auto-suggestion, which give an idea about what information has been extracted. And looking at the result, we have a set of 4,000 articles with a human summary at the top. We can look at the frequency in relative or in absolute term. And as I've been saying, there are problems of OCR, so we have integrated a tool to suggest similar terms. Here we can select variants of Arnhem with Hammam, Arnhem, the German version, a typo where the E and the H have been inverted. This functionality is available in different languages, even cross-lingual soon. And here we see that we increase the coverage of our search. We have now 6,800 results. And we can go through the list of parameters, of filters, which come from metadata, and also from the semantic annotation that we have been adding, mainly named entities and topics. If we look at the topic, we see that there are two main things. There is a football team in Arnhem, so there is a lot of things related to football and things related to the war. Here I highlight the topic related to the war, and I can contrast the distribution of the topic in my current search and in the overall corpus. If I want to know more about the topic, I can click and I go on the topic page and I see the statistical profile of this topic for the whole corpus, the word which have behind this, and the version of the model of it. Coming back to the search, since I want to look at the battle and not about the football team, I select the topics which are related to sport. I apply this. This is being applied in the search field, which is on top, and I actually say that I don't want this topic, so I'm building a query which is sport-free. And now I have something which looks like 5,000 hits. If I want to export to save this in my personal collection, I can. There is already a pre-defined description. I don't want to do it right now, and I continue to explore the result. I can zoom in, zoom out of the small vignette in case I'm interested, and then look at a more specific article where the first view that I got is a page view with marginalia on the side, so it's a bit the distant reading with the main annotation on the side, and I can then switch to the transcript view where I see the facsimile as well as the OCR in the center, and on top the summary of the annotation which have been collected for this article, namely topics and entities. At the bottom there is a set of suggestions for similar articles. And if I look at one specific entity which have been recognized in this article, it's a German actress which was accused to be a spy for the German army. I can also contrast the distribution of her mention in this search versus in the corpus. This entity has been linked to Wikidata, and I can also have more information if I go to the entity page related to this person. Then I can also see the articles which have been related to this person. I also see this little indication on the side, which means that this text passage also appear in another article. If I don't know what is text for use, I can click on the E button. It's an information button which tells me what is text for use, and I can click and go on the FAQ page. If I click on the text for use, I go directly in the text for use view, where I see the two articles which are actually mentioning exactly the same text despite the OCR mistake. So it has been, Candice News has been reporting twice in one Swiss and one Luxembourgish newspaper with 2 days interval. There is also the view of topics, which is a bit experimental. I don't go too long on this. And then the text for use, where you can apply keyword search into the cluster of text for use which have been identified. Here again with a word Arnhem, I obtained the number of cluster which contain this keyword with the interval of day. They overlap, the lexical overlap. and clicking on one, there are 4 passages in this specific cluster, and all these articles are talking about the weather condition, which condition the battle. And I'm free, therefore, to explore this. There is also a way to refine this, the search. I can look to cluster by newspapers. I can put more weight on the lexical overlap, on the days between the text reuse, etc., etc. Now going to the inspect and compare page, it's really a high-level view to compare 2 queries or 2 collections. So I have by default my first query on the left, and on the right I go for another big battle, Stalingrad, and I can already see that just by the number of hits, Stalingrad is dwarfing the Battle of Ehrmann. If I want to make it more specific, I can also access the topic selection here from this view. And now we are really comparing things which are a bit targeting at the same things. We can compare the topic, how they distribute among these 2 queries. We see that there are 7 results in common. I can search for this, which I don't know how will I find this manually. And these articles are really a mix of both queries together. I'm arriving to the end of this demonstration. Now there is a last view, which is a comparison view between these 2 queries, where we look at similarities and dissimilarity. And here what's interesting is that the coverage is mainly of the Battle of Stalingrad, and Arnhem is equivalent for Switzerland, but Luxembourg, which is under Germany control at that time, did not report a lot about Stalingrad. Here's the overview of newspapers, where I can see the newspaper which compose the current corpus, with this system of red and blue about what's available, what's missing. We have been collecting things, I told you at the beginning. We can look more precisely about the newspaper, the metadata associated to it. We have also linked it to authoritative things, such as the Dictionnaire historique de la Suisse. We can browse the first page, etc. And now going back to the search, we work with a sticky search. So even if I go back and forth, I always have my search, which is there. Just want to show the n-gram functionality, which is a bit very common. But here you notice that I'm still with my space of my selected topic. So I don't look in the whole corpus, but in my selected topic, and I can compare the frequency of Arnhem and Stalingrad. It is possible then to download this data in JSON and to do other visualization that I would like to do. I can also have suggestions about similar words based on word embeddings as before. Then another component is a visual search. So here we compute similarity between images. I loaded randomly some pages. Here I selected one comics, just randomly, and I ask for give me similar images about this comics. So if I want to study comics in newspaper, they are coming all together. But perhaps another way to illustrate this functionality is by looking at image in my search. So I will here focus on front pages. I keep my query, but I focus on front pages because it's more likely to have images. And I reduce the time just to focus on the period I'm interested in. And then I will browse the result again. Just breathing a bit. Clicking again on one result, I will see that on the left, in the table of content, which show what is on my page, what is in my issue, I have the image and I can activate get similar image right directly from here. And here it's a picture of soldiers, but if I'm interested, this also works well with maps, with other things. And last but not least, I want to show another functionality, erasing all what we had in the search field so far, looking again for R9, but I will select the corpus which is in public domain, because we also this filtering about the accessibility or the copyright status of the things. And by selecting what is public domain, I just want to show the possibility to share what I'm interested in. If I want to publish this on my website, on a blog post, I have an iframe which is already there. You can modify the colors to get the highlight you want. You can copy it to your clipboard and put it in your website, and you will get the page zoomed in your things. Last point is about my collection. I've been saving my collection. I curated a small collection on the Battle of Stalingrad made of 10 articles. So it's a small collection, I can look at it, etc., but I can also have recommendation from it. So that's a bit experimental. So I get recommendation based on the semantic annotation which we have been adding, location, person, and topics, and then I actually can tune this, whether I want to give more weight to the topics, no weight at all, whether I want to have that the entities which are in this collection play a big role in how it is recommended. All this is tunable. And with this, I think we come to the end of the demonstration. This is the Impresso interface. You can visit it and subscribe to it. If you want more information, everything is on the website, and Zenodo and GitHub, etc. And I thank you for your attention.